Well, hello, English 4 students, and welcome to Chapter 7 of And Then They Were None. You need to do 10 annotations, at least 10. If you go more than 10, more power to you, because once again, writing is thinking, thinking is learning. So the more annotations you take, the more thinking you've done, the more meaning you have built with that text. So without further ado, let's jump into Chapter 7. All right, so Chapter 7. So we came to at the end of chapter. So in the previous chapter, chapter 6, we had Mrs. Rogers die. They kind of talked about the fallout of that, and they discovered only 8 pieces were left. We start off, and we have Emily Brent have a conversation with Vera Claythorne, and in this conversation, she actually finally admits what her association with Beatrice Taylor was. Whenever we interacted with her, but keep in mind, whenever the first accusations were dropped, Emily Brent pleaded the fifth. But now she's telling Vera because it was not suitable for gentlemen to be talking about. Now, this is before we get to where Emily Brent talks about that. But for one of your prompts, if you were to be developing here on page 109, this line right here might be something to explore. I remember the text that hung in my nursery as a child. Be sure thy sin will find thee out. It is true that. Be sure thy sin will find thee out. So here on page 110, we find out how Miss Brent knew Beatrice Taylor. Let me read it for you. Beatrice Taylor was in service with me. Not a nice girl, as I found out too late. I was very much deceived in her. She had nice manners and was very clean and willing. I was very pleased with her, of course. All that was the sheerest hypocrisy. She was a loose girl with no morals, disgusting. It was some time before I found out that she was what they call in trouble. She paused, her delicate nose wrinkling itself in distaste. It was a great shock to me. Her parents were decent folk too. They had brought her up very strictly. I'm glad that they did not condone her behavior. I'm glad to say they did not condone her behavior. So now this is where we find out her relation with her. Beatrice Taylor helped out Emily Brent. Emily Brent ran an older woman. Emily Brent was kind of a person that helped her. Now keep in mind this is like 1930s way of thinking and whatnot. So the key lines here is she was a loose girl with no morals. So she found out something about Beatrice Taylor, and that thing ended up with her being, as they called it, in trouble. So back then, of course, being in trouble would be being a single woman. And of course, if you were a loose girl and you did extracurricular things and ended up pregnant, you would be considered in trouble. So that's kind of what happened. And as a result, Emily Brent kicked her out of the house. And here's what ended up happening after she was kicked out of the house. The abandoned creature, not content with having one sin on her conscience, committed the still graver sin and took her own life. And she threw herself in the river, which, once again, we see Vera shiver every time Vera hears about the water. This changes how Vera perceives Miss Emily Brent. We kind of see that here. Then we have Dr. Armstrong and Philip Lombard having a little bit of a back and forth discussion about the situation at hand. And there is, so right here in this section, Philip Lombard kind of says all these crimes have a commonality. In fact, he says this. It explains Soldier Island. They're the crimes that cannot be brought home to their perpetrators. For instance, the Rogerses, another old war grave who committed his murder strictly within the law. And then you have Armstrong thinking murder in the hospital, murder on the operating table. Yes, safe as houses. So that is kind of his thought about that, and we get the issue that's bugging both of them. We have this. It could have been, yes, if it hadn't been for Marston's death. 2 suicides within 12 hours is a little too much to swallow. If you tell me Anthony Marston, the young bull with no nerves and precious little brains, got the wind up over having mowed down a couple of kids deliberately and put himself out of the way, well, that idea is laughable. And anyway, how did he get a hold of the stuff? From all I've heard, potassium cyanide isn't the kind of stuff you take with you on your waistcoat pocket. But that's your line of country. So the fact that these two deaths coincide is what makes everything strange. Nothing is lining up until right here at the near the end of 116. Then they continue to put stuff together, and we have a massive clue that's dropped by Armstrong reciting the poem. 10 little soldier boys going out to dine. One went out and choked himself, and then there were 9. 9 little soldier boys sat up very late. One overslept himself, and then there were 8. Regardless, these two decide that they're going to search the island. All right, so that is chapter 7. Just kind of some of the things we talked about while reading chapter 7. You need to make sure you do 10 annotations, and tomorrow will be prompt day. 200 words over what idea chapter 7 explores. All right, that's all I have for you. If you have any questions, please email me, pdavidson@portugal.k12.mo.us. Until next time, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.